Hey, Autumn Athletes, Larry Sorensen here, and today I'm connecting with Tom Corrie to find out what makes him an Autumn Athlete that's not done yet. But before we do, please remember to like, subscribe, and ding that bell for notifications if you like the content that we are providing. So let's just dig into this right away. Tom, why don't you tell us your bio basics?
Sure. My name is, as Larry said, Tom Corrie. I am 76 years old. I started my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training when I was 65. Several months ago, I got promoted to black belt, which was a really special moment for me. I am currently an attorney. I am actively practicing, and I have as an undergraduate, I studied physical education and health, played football, was fortunate to be a two-time All-American hammer thrower when I was in college, and I'm married. I have two daughters with my current wife, Laura, and when I was much younger, I had two children, a daughter and a son with my first wife.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on your fitness background?
Well, I remember getting a 110-pound weight set, but mine wasn't one of the plastic ones. I wanted the real deal. So I, I got it. I think it was in 1960. I had just turned 13 a month before Christmas. That's what I wanted. I wound up starting lifting weights, lifted weights all the way through high school. My inspiration originally was Steve Reeves. In those days, Steve Reeves was the original Hercules. And I did notice that he seemed to get all the pretty girls. And it was a very inspiring to me to say, oh, I got to start lifting weights. And as I got into high school, I started playing football, played football in college also. I remember going to college and seeing a couple guys throwing the hammer. I said, gee, that's just like Wee Jordy. I'm going to do that. And that's how how that got started. When I got into my early 30s, I got into some, serious powerlifting and competing. Did pretty well. I eventually left powerlifting world at that stage because really steroids were becoming an epidemic. And I really was teaching phys ed at the time. And I said to myself, how can I, espouse a healthy lifestyle and teaching health to these kids at the same time of taking drugs so they could lift more weights? And I couldn't reconcile the two. So I left that and eventually wound up going to law school at night.
Did you have any setbacks along the way?
Everyone always has setbacks. Yeah, sure. I remember in high school, I broke my arm playing football. I needed to have an operation. I had to have some bone removed, and it was a long rehab after that. I remember my mother was very, very angry because I lived quite a distance from the school, about 2.5 miles. I went up and showed the coach after the game that my elbow kept moving in different directions. And he said, yeah, you should go to the doctor. And I wound up walking home carrying my books for 2.5 miles with a broken arm. Mom was not really happy after that.
I imagine.
I should mention rather, excuse me, that my parents had split up when I was 6 years old. So I had two older sisters. One was 15 years older and one was 10 years older. And for a good part of my home life, they had gotten married, and it was just mom and me in the house.
If you would give us kind of a rundown of your personal best achievements.
Academically, I had an academic scholarship to college, which is the Delphi University, and which is a good thing I did because we were very short on cash, and that allowed me to go through college very nicely. And then we didn't have a car though. I used to have to walk. I walked, through the snow, but I did. I walked 3.5 miles to college and 3.5 miles back. And I remember the summer, when you have you're first introduced, you go in as a freshman. They had kind of a program to introduce freshmen. I think it was in the end of August, and they were having a beach party, and I wound up having to run home 3.5 miles, change my clothes, run back 3.5 miles, go to the beach party, run, and then run home 3.5 miles afterwards.
Great.
But I was 17, and I just do those things.
Sure.
And then I played football in high school. I was a starting guard. When I got to college, besides the hammering when I played football, I had grown, ultimately put on about another 25 pounds or so when I was in college from training. With the football, again, I was somewhat undersized, but I try to make up with it with speed and technique. I played left guard at the time, and I remember very distinctly, Larry, going up against this one guy who was he was quite a bit older. He was in the service or something first, but he was about 25 and about 6'4" and 275. And he lined up over me, and I said, "Oh, this is not going to be good." And I had a pass block the guy, and he hit me so hard. And I've never been knocked out, but he hit me so hard. I was kind of like a tree in the wind. I knew he was going past me, but the stars were coming out so much that I couldn't move. So the next play, I decided I don't want to have that happen again. I have to be honest with you. I knew I was fast as guys. I fired out. I hit him in the groin with my helmet as hard as I could, and I heard him go, "Ugh!" And I said, "Oh, he got religion. Now we've got a whole new game going on here." So that's how I survive sometimes. I did make All American in a couple times in college, and I wound up losing the national championship by 2.5 inches. I remember we were throwing at a place called Hamilton College out in Minnesota, and they didn't have an actual hammer throwing circle. They had made one on the baseball field. And in those days, that was before the pitcher's mound was lowered for the game. So the pitcher's mound was quite high. So my opponent threw his threw his throw over the pitcher's mound, and he gained about 4 or 5 inches on me, and mine went out towards left field. And I wound up losing by 2.5 inches. It's just
Mm,
those are things that happen, along the way.
sure.
But I wound up competing in powerlifting. I did my ultimate best squat, I guess, in the gym was 650. I did 617, and I weighed. I was in a 90 kilogram class, 198 and a quarter, and I did 650, 617 in competition, a 640 deadlift. I never did much bench pressing, but I did do 360.
Okay.
Bench pressing wasn't really very good for hammer throwing at the time.
Yeah.
It tightens you up too much in the upper body. Then, as I said, stopped powerlifting. I decided to go to law school. And when I got out of law school, I studied karate for a while. It just didn't have the same kind. There was no contact, you're kind of like punching into the air and all this other stuff. And there was somewhat, and I had that with several different martial arts that I had done along the way. And I remember just before starting Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I had studied a martial art called Wing Chun, which is a form of Kung Fu that had been Bruce Lee's original. And they had something called anti-grappling techniques, where if somebody gets you on the ground, how do you survive? And I had done some wrestling training when I was in college as a physical education major. And I knew that if what they were showing wasn't going to work. If you went on the ground, we were going to get our royals kicked. So I very soon after that found a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy that was about, I don't know, it was 5 or 6 blocks from where I worked in Midtown Manhattan, and it was run by Vitor Shaolin Ribeiro, who was from Brazil and he's a 4 or 5 time world champion, very well known. He had been an MMA fighter and a champion in Strike Force, I think, or something like that. And that's where I started my training.
And what age were you when you started doing that?
65.
Have you had any specific success in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
I won the New York Open as a blue belt. I won the Masters World Championship down in Las Vegas as a purple belt. I was 70, and that was the last time I competed. And really, I knew when I was doing it. I said, I've been doing this competition thing for a very long time, and winning the world championship, there's an old saying, leaving kind of the field of competition on a particularly good day.
Mm.
Uh, and after that, I kind of turned towards doing the best I could to improve myself.
And you just recently got promoted to black belt.
That was a very emotional experience. I was trying to hold it together, but I did cry. I mean, it was kind of a magical moment.
Right.
It was kind of culmination of having all these athletic things going on in my life. And then, to be honest with you, Larry, I never thought that much of starting when I was 65. It was just something I did. I mean, I trained hard all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in, and first 3 months were like death. I mean, I'm training with people that are in their 20s and 30s, and they're skilled, and I'm kind of strong, but 65 and unskilled.
Yeah.
And it was a very interesting experience. Along the way, injuries that have happened. I mean, I've been in the hospital several times getting stitches in my face, and
Sure.
I had a strained ligament, and all kinds. Recently, I was training on Wednesday, and I tweaked my knee. I'm kind of hobbling around now. This is a real deal. I mean, you're in there, and people are trying to resist, and you're doing the best you can. Um, but some days you're the hammer, and some days you're the nail. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just it's just the way it is.
So now that you've made your black belt, what is on the horizon for you? What are your goals now moving forward?
As I've aged, I use that word relatively. As I've become more senior, let's say, I really think that what gives me, and I think a lot of folks too, the most satisfaction is, yeah, we all, especially if you're competitive, want to achieve certain things and get to certain levels. But helping other people achieve, I think a lot of us, when we're younger, we have certain dreams, things that we want to accomplish, or that we hope we can accomplish during our lifetimes. And oftentimes life gets in the way. There are a number of things that happen, job related, family related, whatever, and you kind of lose track of it a little bit, and you get to the point sometimes when you're, I want to say, in your early 50s, maybe, sometimes a little earlier than that. But you say, you know what, that was a nice dream. I'm not going to accomplish it. But there's always this little desire in you saying, gee, I wish, the Marlon Brando, I could have been a contender, and I want to help people become contenders. That's what I think. Help people to believe in themselves.
So what's your training regimen today?
I go to both classes and private lessons with my professor. I train at a school called Submit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Norwalk, Connecticut. I have a very kind of full basement gym. If you look down there, there's everything from 50 years ago on up. I mean, and it includes not only strength equipment but flexibility equipment and and cardiovascular. Most of my cardiovascular equipment is strength endurance type equipment, like an air bike, where the harder you pedal and move the handles, the more resistance you get.
Mhm.
Uh, Something similar to a Concept 2 rower, where you're pulling and you've got an air fan, but the harder you pull, the harder it becomes.
Mhm.
And located a thing called the endless rope, which is basically a rope that it connects through a kind of a pulley system to the ceiling, and you can just and it has variable resistance, but you're there pulling on this. Remember when you were a kid, you would climb ropes.
Mhm.
I remember in college, I don't think you do it anymore. I don't know if I can. In college, when I was training in phys ed, we'd have two ropes, and you'd go up this way, and you were in the middle. You go up, then you come down. But I missed that kind of upper body training. And in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, it's it's not how much you can bench press, because anyone can get through that one bench press with you. It's after 5 minutes of rolling, how much you got left.
Yeah.
That's when these guys gas out, and then you can go. With this device, the endless rope, it prevents that gas out.
So tell us a little bit about your approach to diet and nutrition.
I remember going to school. My mom would pack me. Now I'm talking about junior high school. I would have 3 sandwiches, 2 or 3 pieces of fruit, a whole thing of chocolate chip cookies, and everything else. Then I would buy lunch at the school. It's just
Yeah.
I was just constantly eating all the time. I had at one time when I was lifting, as I said, I lifted competitively at a 90 kilogram, which is 198. But at one time when I was 23, I was trying to put on weight for hammer throwing and everything else. I got up to 231 and a half. And like with almost a 20-inch neck and all this other nonsense. And when you're 23, you can do those kind of things. But as I got older, I realized, especially as you start to get past, into your 50s or so, that being lighter is better on your joints. So people call it intermittent fasting now, but it used to be called the warrior diet. And the fellow, there's a fellow by the name of Ari Hofmeckler. He was a special forces Israeli guy, and he wrote several books on that. And I read these books and I was fascinated by this. I said, well, I'm going to see how this works. And it worked very well. I mean, I would literally eat one meal a day, and that was it. And when I ate, man, I ate, what I'm saying? And I seriously ate. And I can remember going into, I had to weigh in I entered some masters powerlifting meets when I was in my 50s. And I remember I was dropping a weight class and I had to, watch what I ate. So I I weighed in and I went into the local pizza place afterwards and I ordered 2 meatball heroes and a Parmesan, chicken Parmesan here, I think. There's a big Italian fellow, kind of heavy set. He said, "You want me to pack these to go?" And I said, "No, don't worry about it." I just laid them out and put 3 big heroes down right in front of me. So I can't believe you just did that. but today, most of the time, what my average day looks like, I generally I've gotten to a weight generally around 165 to 167 in that range, and I eat a breakfast, oatmeal, usually with dried fruit and fresh fruit on it, some nuts sometimes, and that's it. I won't eat anything until supper. Supper is generally a regular meal, but within moderation.
Mhm.
I don't eat any sweets, with the exception of my wife and daughter's birthdays or anything else. Something.
What's your go-to cheat meal or cheat dessert when you get a second to do it?
Right. It doesn't take long for a piece of cake to disappear. Anyways,
Yeah.
I've never been a drinker my whole life. Haven't had that. Obviously, no tobacco. I I don't like the taste of coffee. So I've never been a coffee drinker. I did used to drink some tea and also iced tea, but several years ago I had a bout with kidney stones, and the doctor told me that tea drinkers are very prone to kidney stones. So that kind of gave me some religion. I don't know if you've ever had a kidney stone, but trust me, you don't want to. Uh, and that's kind of it. I mean,
Sure.
I drink a lot of water. Will on occasion, because it makes my stomach sometimes feel better, is have a Diet Coke.
So you talked a little bit about your motivation today to help others. Is there anything else that motivates you to keep going at age 76?
I drive myself. I think of things that I can do. Um, Obviously, even in the course of 10 years between 65 and 75, when I got my black belt, I've noticed that certain things have happened. your body changes in terms of flexibility and other things. You constantly got to keep working on it, which reminds me I've got to do more than I've been doing. But I had gotten where I could do 180 horizontal, split on a machine. I had one of these karate machines, and um, if I work at it for another month or so, I can get back out there again. But what happens, you get this arthritis. There's no other way around it. You get arthritis in your joints. And so sometimes some of the techniques that would work in jujitsu for younger folks are not applicable to me. I have to modify them. I work with my coach Dana Weisbrot to modify certain things that play to my strengths and not to my weaknesses. My For all the years of lifting and throwing and everything, my grips are very strong. So if I get a hold of the gi, it's generally they're not getting away. I also when they call close guard, which is when you wrap your legs around the person and you got them down there, it, it's very tight. It's very hard for someone to get out of my close guard. So I work for different things that I can see that I have strengths in. Frankly, uh, Larry, when I started training in jujitsu way back when, I put together a PowerPoint presentation, one or two of them. I updated it, I think, once or twice, where I listed what my strengths were, what my weaknesses were, what my goals were, and how I was going about doing it, how I was going to develop my jujitsu game that would allow me to win a world championship, which, you know, thankfully I was able to do. It's I think a lot of it is planning. I try to use my mind and experience to to get to where I need to go. Give you an example, very quick example. When I was first training, I was training with a young fellow. By the way, I've never rolled with anyone older than me. So these people are always young. This guy was 23 years old. I was 65, I think. And he was a personal trainer, and he looked like he was cut out of granite. He was he was very athletic, very quick. I had an edge on him strength wise, but I remember rolling with him, which is when you're on the mats and you're rolling around, and each one of you trying to prevail. Uh, and he was playing from what they call open guard, which is where I have no contact with him. He's in front of me, but he was so fast he could run around behind me before I could get to stop him, and he would apply a chokehold, and it was very frustrating. Uh, I remember getting off the mats that day and saying, "Man, I'm getting my butt kicked here. I got to figure something out. I don't know if I want to continue doing this." And that night, I woke up in the middle of the night and said, "I think I got what I'm going to do with this guy." So what I did was decide that I'm not letting him play from open guard anymore. I'm going to get my hands on his gi, and he ain't getting away. That's just and it prevented his ability to run around behind me. And you need to have to think of these things, and what you can do. Many times I'm awake in the middle of the night thinking, why did I let that guy do that? Why didn't I try this? I think this will work. Uh, and that's the interesting part of it. It's kind of almost like a mental chess, a physical chess that you're playing. They make one move, you counter that move, realizing that in most cases they're going to be significantly younger than and faster. How not stronger because frankly, old men can retain strength pretty well. Um, but it's an interesting experience.
I'm sure all the jujitsu fans out there would love to know if you have a go-to tap move or what's your favorite maneuver.
Favorite submission is a triangle from guard. I remember there's certain things when you start that and stay in your mind. I mean, it's just that I remember rolling with a fellow, and I was maybe 4 or 5 months in, and the basic triangle choke is one of the basic moves that you learn when you're first starting. And this fellow had, he had quite a bit more experience than I did, but from guard, as I said, I had him in closed guard, and I got him in a triangle, and I applied it properly, and I was squeezing pretty hard, and I didn't understand why he wasn't tapping. You know, when you submit, you tap 2-3 times, and that person lets you go, because you know we don't want to have people passing out all over the place or breaking arms and legs. But when I was applying it, I said, he's just not tapping. Am I doing something wrong? And all of a sudden, I looked up and I saw his eyes rolled in the back of his head, and he had passed out. And you know, when he woke up, he let go with he was wailing. You know, I said, "Whoa," and you know that can be very frightening when you say, I don't want to kill somebody here."
Tom, thanks so much for joining us. This has been a lot of fun. You are definitely an Autumn athlete that's not done yet. I want to close up here by just giving you the floor to give us some final thoughts.
Well, thanks, Larry, for having me. But my really, what I want to speak to is the folks out there who are contemplating, and it doesn't necessarily have to be jujitsu, or contemplating or bemoaning the fact that they didn't do what they could have done when they were younger and achieve certain levels. And that could have been, it could have been anything. It could have been, you know, getting a degree. I mean, I went to law school at a fairly older age, and you know, I'm going to give a plug for myself now. The younger kids are laughing. Well, I graduated magna cum laude. They weren't laughing after that. And you know, the point is not to give up on yourself, to believe in yourself. I have 2 basic rules that I try to follow in my life. One, I try not to let anyone put me into a box and tell me I can't do this or I can't do that. The other thing is I do not put myself into a box. I'm very able and have been over my life to challenge myself. When people tell me I can't do something, I do it. I played football in a position where I was much smaller than everyone else. I was a hammer thrower, you know, I was maybe 195, 200 pounds and 5'9.5". These guys look like woolly behemoths out there. And you know, the same thing with jujitsu. You know, people were saying, well, okay, you know, this guy's 65 years old. This is a joke. You know, a lot of those guys, they're done. You know, they were there for a year or 6 months and never came back. It's not so much the talent that someone has; it's the drive and the commitment. You know, you visualize mentally. This is what it's going to look like when they wrap the black belt around me. This is what it looks like when I'm going to graduate from college. You know, yeah. My wife just graduated with her doctorate from Columbia University, and you know, she didn't give up. She you know, I said, you can do this, and she did extremely well. So folks, that's my parting words to you. Believe in yourself. Don't give up on yourself. Keep going.
Autumn athletes, thanks again for joining us. We will see you next time.